Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adiolu Adetu. I am a business analyst, and we'll be talking through the Gherkin syntax tonight, its uses, and how it's being used in the IT world generally. So this is titled Mastering the Gherkin Syntax in Business Analysis, because obviously I'm a business analyst and I want to show it from my own perspective. So outline of what we'll be talking about tonight. Can I just reiterate? I know Laomi has said it and they just said a few ground rules. If you can please keep the questions until after this session. That will be great. We'll try as much as possible to answer all questions asked. And if you want to drop it in the chat box as well, that is fantastic. So getting into the presentation. Gherkin syntax. The outline for tonight, we'll be talking about what is the Gherkin, relationship between Gherkin and user stories, the benefits of the Gherkin, key features of the Gherkin, keyword-driven format of the Gherkin, approaches to writing BDD scenarios using the Gherkin syntax, obviously, importance of imperative and declarative BDD, that's behavior-driven, and examples and closer look, best practice, and a few brain teasers, and the summary of what we've learned tonight. So if you can, it would be great if we can take notes along the line, because like I said, we've got some brain teasers and a few questions that will be taken after the presentation. So please take notes. So the Gherkin syntax. Today we'll be discussing the Gherkin syntax, its uses, roles, and importance in writing user stories. So a quick fun fact about the Gherkin. The Gherkin is not just a term related to Gherkin syntax in software development. It is also a type of cucumber. I've only just found this out myself. In the context of food, a gherkin refers to a small variety of cucumber that's typically pickled in vinegar, and it's served as a snack. So, that's one thing we've learned. That's one thing we've learned today. So, it's also a cucumber. So, I think it will be quite important for us to distinguish when we're using gherkin. For a lot of people that know this word, to distinguish that this relates to the gherkin in software development. So, what is the gherkin? The definition of the Gherkin. The Gherkin is a plain text language with a specific structure used to write down scenarios and requirements in a way that is easily understood by non-technical stakeholders. We've all been through this training. We know who our stakeholders are, and we understand that not all of them are technical. We've got software developers, we've got testers, we've got business analysts, we've got product owners, we've got other stakeholders, subject matter experts, for instance, that are not technical stakeholders. What the Gherkin does is helping to write down those scenarios in a way that is easily understood by anyone. So that's obviously the definition of a Gherkin. Origin of the Gherkin. The origin of Gherkin, this originated as part of the BDD. So the BDD stands for Behavior-Driven Development Methodology. And it was developed by a guy called Aslak Helesoy. Apologies if I've just murdered that name. And this development describes software behavior from the end user's perspective. So what it does is focusing on describing how the software should behave from the end user's perspective. As IT professionals, this is what should be our focus as well. Is the end user that is going to use this, whatever it is we're developing, the end user is going to use it at the end of the day. So it's always good to work backwards. What is the end user going to see? And if we keep that as our focus, we'll be able to achieve all the requirements that we have planned along the line. So another additional, BDD is not just limited. It's usually used in agile methodology, but it's not limited to agile methodologies, although its practice is commonly associated with agile. It's a software development approach that focuses on defining the behavior of a software system from the end user perspective and ensure that software aligns with the business and user expectation. it also emphasizes collaboration, clear specification, and automated testing. So if you can all please take note of what BDD is, I mean, that can form part of our brain teasers later on. Next will be the role of the Gherkin in BDD. So the role of the Gherkin acts as a bridge between the business stakeholders, the testers, developers, product owners, and all the stakeholders on a software project, ensuring that a common language to discuss and document system behavior. I mean, with the Gherkin, you can never overemphasize the fact that it acts as a bridge for common understanding, a common language. It's in plain English. Everybody can understand it. So there is no confusion about what is being intended or what is meant in a particular scenario. The Gherkin syntax is a domain-specific language. Although it's in English language, it's a domain-specific language used for defining and describing the behavior of the software system in a human-readable and structured format. Like I said, although it's an English language, it's a domain-specific language as well. It's commonly used with tools like the Cucumber spec flow and behaves to create executable specification and automated tests. Like I said earlier, the primary purpose is to provide a common language and easy understandability between both technical stakeholders and the non-technical stakeholders. And it also helps in documentation. So, I mean, also, another thing I wanted to also, the Gherkin is like a perfect framework for writing user story because it gives a consistent approach for reviewing all scenarios, the definitions of done, and provides a crisp acceptance criteria. So next, who are the users of the Gherkin syntax? I mean, all of the stakeholders on the team. I put a few examples here. You've got your business analyst, you've got your testers, you've got your developers, you've got your stakeholders, meaning general, which is a more general term. So, like, I mean, I'll take this word from Deji. He used it the last time we said it. You know, Gherkin is punchy, and I actually did my research. And the punchy means it's an informal term used to describe something that is concise and attention grabbing and impactful. So in that one sentence, we can see that Gherkin is a concise, attention-grabbing, and impactful language. It means that the content is brief, clear to the point, and often makes a strong impression. When we have that in the software development world, for instance, everybody has a clear-cut understanding of what the requirements are. And it provides a structured and concise way for the software to behave. So, I mean, those are the few, those are the definition of Gherkin, the origin, the role, and the users of the Gherkin syntax. For the business analyst, I'll just say, I mean, in business analysis, the Gherkin plays a key role because business analysts also often use this in writing their user stories, in writing their scenarios, and to help them have better understanding of the business scenario. And they can also use the Gherkin to express those requirements in a structured manner. For the developers, for the testers, sorry, so the testers is the next one. So for the testers use the Gherkin scenario to create and execute tests that validate system behavior. It helps them ensure that all the tests are covered in the test covers all possible scenarios. For the developers use the Gherkin as a reference for implementing and testing the desired functionality. And for the stakeholders or project stakeholders, anyone involved in the project, they can benefit from the Gherkin scenario as a way to understand and verify the expected behavior of the software. I mean, by a few things that I've just said, we can see that Gherkin is a language that plays a crucial role in specifying, documenting, and automating software behavior. It's designed to facilitate collaboration among stakeholders in the whole software development process. So we're going to further dive in and look at the relationship between the Gherkin and user stories. So what is the relationship between these two? And I'm maybe I'm being a bit careful now, but I'm talking from the perspective of the business analyst. So Gherkin and user stories are related, but they are distinct elements in the software development process. Gherkin is a language, like I said, used to write and execute things. And, obviously to write your executable acceptance criteria and all of that. Gherkin is a way, and sorry, I'm using your sentence here. I got this from you last time. Gherkin is a way of writing your user story, and Gherkin is the language for your acceptance criteria, which defines your user story. So, what are your user stories? Your user stories are a high-level description of a software feature or requirement from the perspective of an end user. It typically follows a template like I want to, so as a is talking about the type of user, I want is talking about the action, so that it's talking about the benefits or the value. We'll delve into that further on as we carry on. And then it also provides a way to prioritize user need in a simple, non-technical language. So that's the user story. The Gherkin on the other side, just like I said earlier, is specifically designed for writing human readable and executable specification that describe how the software should behave. It uses keywords like given, when, then, and but. These keywords, it uses it to derive step-by-step scenarios that define the expected outcome. Often is also used to document the acceptance criteria of the user story. I mean, the relationship between these two the Gherkin is often used to describe the acceptance criteria for a user story, which specifies the conditions of the scenario that must be met for the user story to be considered complete and done. This criteria helps the development team to understand what needs to be implemented and serves as a basis of testing. So while Gherkin is not a way of writing the user story, it's a way of defining specific conditions that need to be fulfilled. I hope everybody can still hear me quite clearly because, well, allow me, I hope you can still hear me, but yes, I will just carry on anyways. So yes, that's the relationship between the Gherkin and the user story. So next, we're going to look at the benefits of the Gherkin syntax. So obviously, with this diagram on here, we can see that is quite obvious. It enhances team collaboration. So I put a diagram of the business analysts, the developers, the testers, and I mean, obviously, this is just an example, but we can see that it helps each of these different teams to work together, and it also enhances team collaboration because they all have a shared understanding of what needs to be achieved. Why do they have this shared understanding? Because the Gherkin has provided it in a common, understandable language for everybody. That's just the basic thing. Or what other collaboration does it thing does the Gherkin provide? It provides inclusivity. So the Gherkin is understood by the business analyst, is understood by the developer, is understood by the tester, is understood by the product owner, is understood by the SME, the subject matter expert, and is accessible to both technical and non-technical team members. For instance, now if whoever picks up goes on the let's use the Azure board for instance, whoever goes on the Azure board, when you pick a user story, you read the acceptance criteria. It's in plain English language. You will not struggle with understanding unless if it was a line of code. I mean, if you gave me a line of code, for instance, I wouldn't know how to read it. But because the Gherkin is in a plain language and it's in English language, anybody can read it and understand, oh, this is what this means. And it just makes it quite easy, and it makes it quite it fosters inclusivity because everyone feels included and everyone doesn't feel, oh, this is a coding language, oh, I don't understand it. They read it's in plain English and there's easy understanding. It also promotes early feedback. I'll give the project I'm working on now as an example. So when we're doing a sprint refinement and we're refining our user stories and all, because it's in plain English, and when I'm writing, a developer comes and says, "Oh no, this is don't write it like this." Tester comes and say, "Oh, can you write it in such a way that we can understand it better?" So when we're doing that refinement, we are getting feedback from everybody at every point in time, saying with Gherkin scenarios, because they understand what I'm trying to say. And it also helps to lead to quicker identification of misunderstanding or ambiguities in the requirements, because they say, oh, what do you mean by this? And I have to explain myself as a business analyst that this is what I mean by writing this line, given, and what action do you want to take? And okay, so you say, and the user will do this, and the user will be able to log in. What do you mean by that? That way, it enhances any feedback when we're talking about the Gherkin syntax. Also, it provides a consistent language. I mean, you can't overemphasize this, and I've said this over and over again. It provides a consistent language. When you open a user story that's written in Gherkin, you know what you expect. You know what you expect within the acceptance criteria. You know the keywords that you're looking for, given, when, then. And you know what each of those keywords stands for, regardless of your role in the team. I mean, this structure ensures that all of the acceptance criteria are written in a uniform manner, an understandable manner as well, and is a uniform terminology. Given, when, then. Everybody knows, okay, yes, this is fine. It's a given, when, then. It reduces misunderstanding and ensures that everybody is on the same page. So basis for automation for testers, obviously, that's another benefit of the Gherkin. It enhances executable tests. It can be used for creating executable tests within, apologies testers, but it can be used to, as a foundation for creating executable tests and behaviors. Also, within the basis for automation, it can be reused. So the Gherkin, what I've learned is that the Gherkin can be reused for automation across different test cases, which saves time and maintains consistency and ensures that each user story or each scenario is tested properly. Another benefit of the Gherkin is clarity in your acceptance criteria. Like I said before, clarity is, the Gherkin is structured in a way, you know what the keywords are, given, when, then. We know what each of those steps describe and the specific expected outcome, making it evident that this is what the software should do under certain conditions, under some of the conditions that, under some of the preconditions that we have highlighted below. It also makes sure that the description or the acceptance criteria is not ambiguous. There is clarity. And this aids the developers, it aids the testers. It aids the testers in their process, it aids the developers in their understanding of the future, and reduces the likelihood of incomplete testing. Obviously, the reason another benefit under the clear acceptance criteria is documentation. Documentation, you've written the Gherkin. Everybody can see it as clear as day. This is what we need to achieve with this acceptance criteria. And it serves as documentation for the acceptance criteria, ensuring that each step in all of that acceptance criteria is clearly and explicitly defined, and it can be tracked through the development life cycle. So we're using the Azure board as another as an example today. When you start in each of the columns, as the user story moves from column to column within the board, everybody, it's still the same user story, and everybody is using that same user story, and the Gherkin that we have read, everybody is using it, and they're using it to track it throughout the lifestyle, from the being in approved and committed to done. That can be tracked, and it also provides like an audit trail. Apologies to my finance, but this is from my finance background, but it provides like a trail, an audit trail of what happened from inception to conclusion. I mean, the Gherkin is a valuable tool. And like I said, we cannot overemphasize the benefits of it. It enhances team collaboration. It also enhances consistent language, and it provides basis for automation, and also it leads to a clear acceptance criteria. Next, we'll be looking at the key features of the Gherkin syntax. So what are these key features of the Gherkin syntax? The Gherkin is organized into files that contain descriptions of features and functionalities. These descriptions consist of like an outline of what the software or how the software is expected to behave. So that's in a structured format. Everybody knows that if I use given, when, then, and all of that, they know what to expect, and they know what I'm asking for in each of those lines and each of those steps that I've provided for them within the Gherkin. What are the keywords? the keywords within the Gherkin. I will be diving further into the keywords of the Gherkin. So the Gherkin uses specific keywords to define the intent of each step within a scenario. The ones that are most common are the feature describing the high-level functionality, the scenario describing the specific, obviously that's obvious, the scenario describing the scenario, but instead of saying describing the scenario, I'll just say describing the specific instance. Given, describing the context. When, describing the action or the trigger. Then, describing the expected result or the outcome. And but, describing additional steps for each of these keywords that I've said earlier. Also, the Gherkin is human readable. That is why the Gherkin was designed to be easily understood by the individuals that are non-technical. Let me just use that word, that are non-technical, because it comes in a clear, concise language to describe what is the expected outcome and how the software should behave. It's also executable, just like I said, with automation and automation test. The Gherkin allows those scenarios to be tested and executed. Then collaboration. We will keep seeing collaboration along the line as we're going through this. But, the Gherkin promotes collaboration and among all of the stakeholders within a team. So those are a few of the key features of the Gherkin syntax. Next, we'll be looking at the keyword-driven format in the Gherkin. So now we'll dive into those keywords that I mentioned earlier in the earlier slide, the given, when, then. We'll be diving further into that and seeing how exactly it works. So the keywords within the Gherkin and the BBD. So the keywords-driven format in the Gherkin, we have the feature. The feature is a keyword used to introduce the high-level functionality that is being tested or that's been on the board. So high-level functionality, this describes the high-level functionality being tested. That's the feature. Next will be the scenario. The scenario is the keyword is used to define a specific scenario. It represents a particular set of conditions and expected outcome. That is the scenario. Describe a specific instance or scenario within the future. So each of these, we can see that I put it in an order of hierarchy. The feature, that's the high-level functionality being tested. The scenario describes the specific instance, scenario or instance within the future. And then you have the given. So the given is the keyword used to describe the initial context or precondition. It sets the stage. This is the keyword the given is the keyword that sets the stage. It's the stage setter. So it sets the initial state. And so just remember that particular hierarchy. Feature, high-level functionality being tested. Scenario, the specific instance of scenario within the feature. Then given sets the stage for each of for this high-level functionalities that we have mentioned. It sets the stage for this feature and the scenario. So given, it sets the stage. And then the next one is when. So when is a keyword that is used to describe the action or the trigger point. So it describes the action or event that triggers the scenario. Remember, the feature, high-level functionality. Scenario within the feature. Given, sets the stage for the scenario. When, describes the action or the event that needs to trigger that scenario or that needs to occur. Next will be then. So then is the expected outcome. Sorry, my slide outside. There we go. Next describes describes the expected outcome or the result after the action has taken place. It represents the expected end state of the scenario. So if we go back looking at that hierarchy, feature, high level, functionality being tested, scenario is a scenario within the feature. The given sets the stage for the scenario, which is the precondition for the scenario. The when sets the action that triggers the action or the event that needs to occur within that scenario. And the then describes the end result expected for that scenario. It's like the end, full stop, the end state of the scenario. That's the then. So we can see how each level flows into each other. I mean, I hope you are able to understand it, but we can see that each of these things flow into each other and they are all interwoven and interrelated in this example that I've given. So that's the keyword-driven format of the Gherkin. Also, there's another one which is and. So and is an additional step that provides more detail within the given, when, or then scenario. I mean, when we further on in this presentation, we'll go through a live example of the Gherkin syntax and how it is being used. And then we'll be able to see each of these keywords being used and how it works in real life. So, and is the additional steps that provides more detail within the given, when, or then section. So, for instance, instead of using given a number of times, you can use an. I mean, we'll see how that works in a few minutes. So, approaches to writing the BDD in using Gherkin. So, BDD, like I said, behavior-driven developments. BDD. In fact, let me just write that down. So, if you can take a note, please, because I might be asking a simple question regarding this. So, there are two types of approach to writing Gherkin scenarios, which are used in behavior-driven development. There's the imperative approach, and there's the declarative approach. So the imperative Gherkin, what is the imperative Gherkin? This focuses on describing the step-by-step action. Remember what I said earlier. Gherkin is step-by-step action, what needs to happen in each scenario. So this type of these two types of BDD scenarios, the imperative and declarative, there are still types of Gherkin, but they differ in certain ways. So imperative Gherkin, I mean, this focuses on the how. It focuses on the how. It describes a step-by-step action taken by a user to achieve a particular outcome. It specifies, like, it gives like detailed specification of what exactly needs to happen and specific actions that the user needs to achieve. So in there, I've said step-by-step actions, specifying exact sequence of actions a user should perform. It's used to provide detailed instruction about a functionality, and it focuses on the how. So that's the imperative Gherkin. When do we use the imperative Gherkin? We use the imperative Gherkin when we want to provide explicit, detailed instruction about how a functionality should work. I mean, usually in real life, on my project as a business analyst, I usually use this. I use more of the imperative because I normally write my user stories with the detailed instruction about how a functionality should work, even when then, and it's sometimes quite long and lengthy. But I like to. I mean, personally, I like to provide explicit instruction about how something should work generally, not just in business analysis now, which is why I tend to use more of the imperative approach in writing my Gherkin syntax. I mean, it's very useful when you need to specify the exact step within each of those scenarios. So that is when we use the imperative Gherkin syntax. The next one is the declarative Gherkin. So the declarative Gherkin focuses on the what? Sorry. Oh, there we go. The declarative Gherkin focuses on the what. So what is the declarative Gherkin? This focuses on describing the desired outcome without specifying the exact steps to achieve it. I mean, not a lot of people like stories like I do. And some people would rather you not bore them with details. Just tell me, what do you want to achieve? Go straight to the point. So I mean, especially when you need to go straight to the point, or maybe for instance, you have stakeholders that you've been struggling to get online, or you've been struggling to get them in a meeting for so long. I know that you are pressed for time, you have 5 minutes, or you have, I don't know, sometimes you just need to measure your situation and see which of the approach works better for you. But the declarative Gherkin is for quick, straight to the point, acceptance criteria or user story. So this allows for like more, should I say, high level description of what should happen. So remember, in this one, I'm saying that this one focuses on the what rather than the imperative that focuses on the how. In fact, I've thought of a question now. Let me quickly write it down. Apologies, give me a second. Okay, so a declarative focuses on the what, and it is used to emphasize the behavior of a feature rather than specific interactions or rather than specific actions. It also used to describe desired outcome without specifying the steps. When do we use the declarative Gherkin? Like I said earlier, when you rather be specific and you just want to go straight to the point, then if you use the declarative, you are focusing on the end result. This is what we need to do, high level. You know, I mean, they don't have time. Everybody's pressed for time. So that's it. I mean, that's one of the main places where you have to use the declarative Gherkin. I mean, going back to this, in the imperative Gherkin, for instance, each step is explicitly defined. Outline is like using a fine needle to pick through things, and you're outlining the exact, because I mean, some people would rather you, for instance, like I said, I'd rather you tell me each line of action that I need to take. When I'm fixing a table, for instance, or I go to IKEA, I buy a table, I'd rather need a manual that shows me the exact step of what I need to do. Using that IKEA table as an example now, if you go to IKEA and you have a manual that says, oh, that is your table, I mean, that doesn't help anybody. But if you have a manual that shows you the exact action that you need to show, not with the exact action, it shows you pictures of what you need to do. That in itself is fully encompassing, and you can, put that table together independently without any help or any external support. I mean, I have my own personal preference, but the choice between the imperative and the declarative Gherkin depends on the level of detail needed for each particular scenario. So, of course, you need to look at that scenario. You need to be able to judge, make an informed decision on which one is better. Imperative scenario more suitable when you need to provide clear step-by-step instruction. So, like the IKEA table, for instance, if that is the user story you want to write at that point in time with the IKEA table, then you know that you need to use your imperative, because the declarative in that instance of the IKEA table would not work. But when you want to focus on the result and overall behavior, then you don't have to waste time on your imperative. You can just go straight to your declarative, because that gives you a better scenario when you want to emphasize the overall result. Sorry, Wumi, please, can you still hear me? Just checking. Importance. Yes, okay, thank you. The next we'll be looking at the importance of using the imperative and the declarative Gherkin in the BDD. So BDD. Declarative and imperative Gherkin, they're both languages used, and each of them have their own importance, depending on where we're looking at it. So the imperative Gherkin, for instance, it gives you it's important because it can be more reusable across multiple scenarios, and it promotes efficient case management and minimizes redundancies. Is reusable across different or even different, sometimes even different projects. You can use the imperative Gherkin within that. I mean, it also gives you it allows for like how do I put it, more control over the test implementation. I mean, this is quite very important when dealing with like complex or dynamic scenarios that are not easily expressed, or that cannot be easily expressed using the declarative Gherkin. So it gives you control, it gives you flexibility. You can control, you can manipulate, you can write as much as you want, you can write as little as you want. You can just, you can go all out and write and really explain the fine print within each of those scenarios using the imperative one. Also, the imperative is useful when it comes to integration with code, because it's tightly, obviously, the imperative Gherkin is often used when tightly integrated with the Gherkin scenarios. When integrating the Gherkin scenarios, testers, integrating Gherkin scenarios with the actual test codes. So it allows seamless navigation between the high-level specification and the low-level test in implementation. The declarative, on the other hand, has its own importance as well. So in the declarative Gherkin, you have clarity and readability. is focusing on describing the expected outcome in human readable, in English language. Let's just say using keywords. I mean, it focuses on the expected outcome, making them accessible to non-technical stakeholder. It also serves as, live documentation. It evolves with the project, acting as a reference point for the entire team to understand and verify the system behavior. Enhance collaboration. I think I've said this over and over again, but we cannot overemphasize this. It's more accessible, or obviously the declaration is more accessible to product owners, SMEs, subject matter experts, and non-technical stakeholders. So which helps to foster collaboration by ensuring understanding of how the system should behave. So, I mean, we've looked about the Gherkin. What is the Gherkin? The origin, the role, the uses, the benefits, the keywords of the Gherkin syntax, and the importance of using it. So now we'll delve into a user story with the Gherkin syntax, using the Gherkin syntax. So this is just, here are just a few screenshots and abstract of user stories written on Azure board with using the Gherkin syntax. We'll look at one of it closely now. So we're looking at a user story that's written using an imperative Gherkin in this abstract scenario. So what I've done is user registration. So this is one of the abstracts that I've taken from the project that I'm working on. That's the feature, which is the user registration. This is supposed to test like the basic functionality of the sign-up process of a website. Include steps for navigating the sign-up, entering user details, agreeing to terms and conditions, and all of that. So let's look at that. The feature is user registration. So obviously, as a user of the website, I want to sign up for an account so that I can access videos and resources. Scenario, user signs off successfully. So this is where we should focus on for the Gherkin. Given I am on the landing page of the YouTube website. Given, remember, what is given? Given is the precondition. It's a keyword used in Gherkin, used to define the precondition of the Gherkin. So given I am on the landing page of the website, this is the precondition. And I click on the sign up button. Remember what I said earlier, and is used to identify additional steps under each keyword. So this and here is representing an additional step under the given. So this and is an additional precondition. And I click on the sign up button. And I am on the sign up page. When? So if you look at that, given and, those first three lines are the precondition, because I've said given, and the and follows the given. So wherever the and, we need to look at your acceptance criteria at every point in time. Wherever the and is, determines what is being referred to in that particular line. So because the and is after the given in this particular scenario, there are two ands after the given. These two ands are referring to the given, which is referring to the precondition of the scenario. Now I've gone on to my next step, which is the action and the trigger. When I enter my email address, I mean, in this example, each step is explicitly defined to guide the user registration process. I mean, if you were a user, for instance, and you were to go to this website that I'm talking about, and you see the scenario, and I've told you, given you are on the landing page, you know that, oh, I need to find the landing page of where's the landing page, or you're on the landing page of the website. Okay, I'm on the website, and I click on when you're on the website, what's the next thing you do? And I click on the sign up button. It's written in plain English language. You click. What do you start looking for on that website? You start looking for the sign up button. And I am on the sign up. If you don't find the sign up button, you are looking for something that clicks, that tells you or takes you to the sign up page. So that's a precondition. You know that you have to be on that place. You have to look for the sign up button. You have to look for the sign up page before you can then enter your email address, which is an action required by you as the user. So if we carry on, when I enter my email address and I enter my full name. So remember what I said earlier. The and is an additional step. So if you look at this given and when and, the and after the when is referring to the when. So the and after the given has finished. Excuse my better choice of word, but the and after this given has finished. Is now this and that we are on now, and I enter my full name is now referring to the when. And if you look at each of those lines, you see when I enter my email address, that's an action that the user needs to perform. And I enter my full name. That's another action that the user needs to perform. But the giving, you can see that at that point in time, there's no specific, I mean, there's a specific action. You need to look for the sign up button, you need to look for the sign up page, but there's no specific, there's no requirement at that point in time for you as a user to input anything on the website, which is why we say the when is the trigger. The when is the action that you need to take, or that the user needs to take at any point in time within the Gherkin. And I set a password. That's another action point. That is another trigger. And I mean, you don't even have to hurt your head over any of this. Once you see, you just need to put in your mind, what are the keywords within Gherkin? Given, when, then. What do they describe? Given, precondition, when, action, then result. Maybe we can even find a nomenclature for it, or something that makes you remember quite quickly. Given, when, and given, when, then, apologies. Given, when, then. So think of giving. And when you see, wherever you see those keywords within the acceptance criteria, or within the scenario, wherever you see those keywords, just look for those keywords. Wherever you see those keywords, any and that is after it, you know that is referring to that keyword that precedes it. So let's go. And I confirm the password. This is another action. This is another trigger that is referring to the when. Another additional step for the when. And I agree to the terms and conditions. This is another trigger point, another action for the when. I hope it's making sense, and I hope you're able to gain better understanding of this. But we'll find out later on in the meeting when we do like a brain teaser and a knowledge check. So that will be fine. And I click on the sign up button. Then now we can see that break. Then I should receive a confirmation email. That is the output expected in this particular scenario. And I should see a success message saying you have successfully signed up. So that and after the then is what? The expected outcome, the expected results. And I should be registered successfully. So if you look at that, and I should be registered successfully. And what is your scenario saying at the top? Your scenario is saying that the user signs up successfully. That is the scenario that we're trying to achieve in this here at the moment. And I should be registered successfully. You can see the correlation between that and I should be registered successfully and the scenario which says the user signs up successfully. So that should tell you at any point in time, if you don't see let's say for instance, for some reason, the then has fallen off the screen and you can't even see it. But you see that line that says, and I should be registered successfully, then you know that is the output, because that output aligns 100% with the scenario at the top that says the user signs up successfully. And I should be redirected to the home page saying, these are the things that I want in this scenario, the user registration. These are the steps I want to be followed within this scenario. And this is the outcome that I want to be achieved for this scenario. We can all see it in plain, simple English language. Anybody can come on here, anybody that picks this thing. I mean, even if as I've gone through it tonight with you guys, you can see you have understanding of it, because it's not in any jargon language, or it's not in any weird language. It's simple, straightforward set of instructions that have been given to follow. Each step is explicitly defined to guide the user through the registration process, including filling out the form, agreeing to the terms and conditions, validating the outcome of the registration. So this is an imperative approach with detailed instruction. Next, we'll be looking at the declarative Gherkin. So in this example, we're using the same feature, declarative. What is the feature? User registration. What do we want to achieve? As a user, of the website. I want to sign up for the account so that I can access resources, the videos and educational resources on there. So scenario, the same exact scenario, the same exact feature. User signs up successfully. Given I am on the sign up page of the website, and I initiate the sign up process. When I initiate the sign up process, so what I've done in this situation is I've just put it, so for clarity and for better understanding, I put it given, when, then. But it doesn't mean that you cannot add and in declarative as well. There's no rule that says you cannot add and to it. It's just that it needs to be simple, straightforward, to the point. So given I'm on the sign up page of the website, when I initiate the sign up process, so we can already see here the difference between the declarative and the imperative. In the imperative was giving us step-by-step defined instruction, but this one is saying when I initiate the sign up process. I think this is more, the declarative is a more intuitive type of writing the Gherkin. When I initiate, so if I'm a user and I'm on the website, when I initiate the sign up process, so I need to think to myself, how do I initiate the sign up process? I'm a user, I'm on the website, I want to register. For crying out loud, the sign up button or the registration, it might not even say sign up, it might say register instead of sign up. But I know that I need to initiate that process. So I know I need to go on the website, look for the register button, click on it, whatever instruction I've been asked on the website to do all of that. Then I should be registered for successfully with my email, password, and my full name. So we can see the keywords in here. Given, that's a precondition. When, that's the action and the trigger. Then, that is the outcome that we want to achieve. And I should receive a confirmation email. So that and is only referring to the pre-keyword that is before it, which is the then, which is the outcome, which is the result. Remember, given, precondition, when, action, then results. Simple, straightforward. Those are the things that you need to talk. And when you start to familiarize yourself with these keywords, when you're writing the Gherkin, it comes to you as second nature. I, for one, when I started my training with Blue Sky, and one of the tutors, I think it was okay that she took the Gherkin, and that was actually what piqued my interest. She took this on user story writing and the Gherkin syntax and all of that. And she took us through all of this process. And I was like, oh, initially when I started, obviously learning curve and all of that, I was like, oh, how do I write it? I'll write it, I'll write it, I'll edit it and say, okay, I should write it better, I should write it this way. But the more you get to use it, the more it becomes part and parcel of you. And when you have that in your head, that these are the keywords and so do not focus too much on the and just focus on the keyword. Once you have it at the back of your head, that given is precondition, when is action, then is the result. It'll help you to be able to write you'll be able to write your user stories more smoothly. You won't even think of it, and it'll be like second nature to you. In this example, the emphasis is on the desired outcome, and it's simple, straightforward. It's showing you high-level steps. Is technical issue, and it focuses on what the user should achieve. Remember, declarative, what? Imperative, how? So this is focusing on what the user should achieve during the registration process. You need to sign up. You need to be registered successfully and get a confirmation email. It's focusing on what the user should achieve during the registration process. Unlike the imperative that is focusing on the how, detailed step-by-step instruction. The declarative Gherkin, or the declarative approach, is like a business-oriented. It provides clarity on the expected behavior without specifying every single step. So, I hope we have a clearer understanding of the imperative and the declarative Gherkin, and we have obviously seen example and how it works. So next, and I should be able to apologies, I didn't even realize I had another one, and I should be able to log in with my registered email address, reiterating what I've said earlier. This is the action word that comes out. So what are the best practices in Gherkin? These are just things that we've said earlier. The keyword-driven format, the way in which we're supposed to write our Gherkin and all of that. In business analysis, The best practice for Gherkin is, to ensure clarity. I said that and I kind of emphasize that. Ensure clarity and effective communication and collaboration between all stakeholders. That is what the Gherkin is here to achieve. By following these best practices, we can leverage on effective communication. So what do we do in this best practice? Start with giving, when, then. We need to follow this best practice so that we ensure that our user stories, our acceptance criteria are clearly defined. Clearly defined, ensuring shared understanding. Start with your giving, when, then. Begin each scenario with giving. Remember, if you remember that giving is a precondition, then you remember that you need to start with giving. Giving, setting up the precondition, setting up the initial context. Follow with when. When describes the action. When describes the trigger. And end with a then. End with a then to specify the expected outcome. So those are examples of the best practice. It doesn't mean that when it doesn't mean, let me just clarify this a bit further. When I say start with giving and then followed by when and a then. So when you start with giving, remember, it's not just start with giving and jumping into when. If you have another level of precondition, you can add it in there, just like I shown in the example that I showed earlier. So giving and. So instead of saying, let me just give you like a simple example here. Instead of saying giving in 10 different lines. So let me just go back quickly to that slide here. Let me go back quickly to this, my slide. Instead of saying, in this particular scenario here, instead of saying giving, I'm saying giving and all of this and is still referring to the giving. All of this and still means giving, but I'm just saying and to avoid reiteration and avoid me using the same word over and over again. So just going back to my slide that says, start with giving, when, and then to specify the outcome. Use and but use it sparingly to add additional context and variation to the steps. I mean, if we use it excessively, it can actually confuse or make the scenario a little hard to follow. But use it sparingly. But I mean, when necessary, when you need to use it, you need to use it. But I've just avoid excessive use of it. Another key important thing in best practice is to stay consistent. Maintain a consistent terminology and style throughout. To ensure better understanding of all of the stakeholders, you need to maintain consistency. And then you also need to make sure it's readable. That's the whole design of the Gherkin in the first place. It's designed to be human readable. So try to make it readable. Avoid overloading it with technical details or technical jargon, and focus on what the user experiences or what the user is expected to see. So just like my previous example, giving I'm on the landing page. So I'm focusing on what the user sees. So what I've done in that scenario is provide a pictorial, not exactly a pictorial representation, but like a pictorial representation in the user's mind. Given I am on the landing page and I click on the sign up button. So in the user's mind, the user sees the landing page, even if it's not in front of me. So the user sees the landing page. The user, in their mind, they are looking for the sign up page button. And I am on the sign up page. He's looking for the sign up button. So I'm focusing on the user's experience. I'm going through each level, each step that the user is experiencing along the way. Do you get? So, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about Gherkin. Also, we should learn to use professional language and good language that the user can understand, that the stakeholders can understand. Apologies. Writing scenarios, it's in English language. And obviously with it being in English language, it fosters understandability of the stakeholders. So use business language, avoid technical jargon that might be confusing to non-technical team members. Just use clear, concise language that everybody can understand. Those are one of the best practices, and this will help you to be able to develop your Gherkin and using, writing your Gherkin systems, writing your user stories in a clear, concise manner. Then using descriptive feature names. Remember in that previous slide, and apologies if I keep going back to that previous slide, when I said given I'm on the landing page, I'm trying to remember the feature. So the feature name on there was user registration. Yeah, that's the feature name, user registration. I mean, that's clear as day. User registration, what does it mean? It means the user is registering on the website, which is why I come back to say that one of the best practices and one of the things you need to do when writing your Gherkin is to use descriptive feature names. Clear, concise, clearly defining or clearly identifying the aspect of the system functionality that you're referring to. Avoid using ambiguous terms. Another point that I wanted to discuss in the best practice of the Gherkin is write clear and specific scenarios. Clear, concise, specific scenario, focusing on the feature. Focusing on the feature, clear and concise, no jargon, no, clear, straightforward to the point as much as possible. So that is me on the Gherkin syntax. I mean, we're not finished the presentation, but now we'll be going through some of the, we'll be reviewing some of the things that I've said earlier, and just to see how much understanding, not to call anybody, but how much understanding we have of what we have just gone through, how much understanding of the Gherkin syntax. I mean, we can all see that it's quite simple, it's quite straightforward, there's no ambiguity about it, which is the beauty of the Gherkin. So the knowledge test here is, when we're going to write this story, we're going to go through the story together, if that's okay. A user wants to log in. It's a simple one. A user wants to log in to an educational video website. Please write Gherkin steps given, when, then for this scenario. I mean, if Laomi, can you please confirm if this is okay? For me to, if you can give everybody like 1 minute